Hello, and welcome to Rocket Fuel, your daily update of everything that's happening in the Rocket Pool community. My name is Whack. Today is November 22nd, and today's episode is going to cover some ideas to get some community-generated tweets on the official Rocket Pool account. We're going to cover a discussion that happened in the community about the team hiring more developers. We're going to talk about the rETH price and the peg. We're going to talk about RPL. We're going to talk about a validator queue that's forming and a whole lot more. So let's get started.
10, 9, ignition sequence start, 6.
Okay, so the first thing was this idea that I had about getting more tweets on the Rocket Pool Twitter account. So this was a discussion a few days ago where people were quite upset about there not being enough tweets on the Twitter account. And, since we got control back, there's just been, I think, 2 or 3 tweets in a few weeks. And I think a lot of people in the community were like, this is a huge wasted opportunity. We could be doing so much better with this. We could be driving engagement and, we really need that at this time for the protocol. And this was talked about on the weekly orbit from earlier today as well, that, we need this to be happening. So there's this idea that kind of got brought up and it goes like this, that basically there's a new thread under trading and it's a tweet generation system, and basically people will put their ideas for tweets in that thread, and it will have things like text, an explanation for why you think that would be a good tweet, and any images that go with that. And then the original idea I had was that a few community members could kind of curate that and pass it along to Mav, who could then put it on the Twitter account, whatever he thought was best. So there were these 2 threads created. One was the Twitter idea thread, and one was tweets selected for moderation. And basically the idea is that in the Twitter ideas thread, you can, keep your tweets factual, add images and explanations, and for example, here, like I put a submission. I said there is capacity in the Rocket Pool protocol to mint 26,000 rETH right now. An explanation of that is highlights that the deposit pool has space right now, and an image to go with that. Here, there's a little screenshot of the live deposit pool status, giving an output saying that there's enough space for 26,000 more rETH. Lee then put a suggestion as well, saying that it's been said that diversification is the only free lunch to investing. If you already hold the largest STE, it might be time to diversify with the most decentralized, most Ethereum aligned LST. So he's of course saying that maybe get rETH, and that should be good. So these are the kind of ideas that basically I want community members to kind of as they kind of talk through the day about things that are happening in Rocket Pool, they could throw in a tweet or two, write out a couple of tweets, put it in there. Then Mav could, the idea that I presented was that, there'd be a moderation team that could then send the next thread over. But in this discussion with Noshua, he was like, what's the potential of having a committee and Mav? How is the committee decided? Is it team selected? I said, I don't know. Do you have any suggestions? I said, maybe we can work on an emoji system instead. Enough reactions and we move it to the second queue. And he says, why don't you just let Mav pick? I said that would make extra work for him. If we self-select beforehand, it'd make it easier for him. I don't know how many tweet suggestions of AI shrimp he wants to troll through. And then I just said, sorry, LFO, that's the thing in trading that you see sometimes, or images of breadsheet. And I said, so in response, they were saying that Noshua and Val actually started giving feedback as well, saying like, it sounds like a made up problem. He says, how many spammy submissions do you get for Rocket Fuel? Is this more work and less reward? And yeah, when you put it like that, it does make sense. Like, not too many people put spammy submissions for Rocket Fuel. Sometimes when we get a joke submission, it's just, something to laugh at and it's not anything extra. Valdov says, I agree with Noshua, it probably doesn't need the extra filter, or we can arrive at an organic one like thumbs up or thumbs down. So if you pop into the tweet thread and you give it a thumbs up, then that is more likely that Mav might look at that. And then Noshua replied with a thumbs up. So I says, let's just try it with one queue, and the emojis make sense. He says, especially a committee probably means voting, and one that doesn't have the final say is probably overkill. I said, I totally understand. He says, there's no, then they're talking about Nectar. So yeah, anyway, yeah, so let's go back. So here, let's just stick with the tweet idea thread and forget the selection for moderation thread. I'll actually just leave a message. Let's not use this thread for now. And just stick with a tweet idea thread. Yeah, so if you just stick with the tweet idea thread over here, you can then put your tweet ideas, and maybe you can get POAP for people who submit ideas that get tweeted out. I think that might be a nice little incentive as well. And I didn't actually write that in the thing, but I really should have written that because people like doing things for POAPs. Maybe then we can even have a little bit of a raffle or something with the POAPs, like to kind of incentivize good submissions. I think that would be really good. So the idea for this is that we the community every day would generate some tweets, a number of them, of which like 2 or 3 could be used by Mav to either tweet them out right away, or potentially set them up to queue, and that way there'll be tweets coming out from the official Rocket Pool account every day, like multiple times a day. And of course what happens with that is that people see the tweets, they engage with the protocol, they're more likely to retweet it, like send it out, and then that begets more engagement, and like we really need that right now. So I think that this is a really good idea, if I say so myself. We just need to like kind of finesse the mechanism with which it works, but it seems like Nosho's and Val's feedback is quite good. So I think that probably what we'll do. So start submitting your tweet ideas, whatever you think. I think Mav has access to some template images that he can edit based on those tweet ideas that he can use. So if you don't have an image you want to add, but images, I think adding an image is actually quite nice, because I think Twitter responds well with images attached to tweets. So that I think could be a good idea. Okay, next I want to kind of summarize this really long discussion that took place in trading today, and it kind of started a little bit before this tweet that I'm mentioning, and it came from a discussion that was kind of started by Mountain B, and Mountain B was kind of talking about why RPL is locked on a validator when people can start validators without RPL now. What's the point of punishing existing node operators by having them lock up RPL and not being able to withdraw it? Now, the reason for that is quite clear and simple. When we came up with the idea of Saturn Zero, we wanted to act fast. Acting fast meant working with just parameter changes, not working with smart contract changes. And with parameter changes, what we did was, set the minimum RPL threshold to 0, and then set it so you could stake your ETH without having any RPL. So, we still have LEB8s. There's no changes in that front, and there's no other real changes that happen on chain. The off-chain changes are, of course, the off-chain changes are the tree version 10, and the other thing that's changed as well is that you have 5% commission set at the contract level for the new validators. So there were just very minimal tweaks. Trying to change things like RPL withdrawal limits and things like that would have involved smart contract changes, and those smart contract changes I think would have slowed down Saturn 1 and Saturn 2, and that's something that we really didn't want to do. So the discussion kind of then from there led to like a slightly different discussion, which kind of ended up being about the team hiring more people. So I'm kind of jumping into the middle of the discussion here, so hopefully you can all kind of follow along, and I've done a decent job of following it along. So he says, they're talking about the RPL collateral here. So he says someone is 20 to 30% collateralized, been long-term supporter of Rocket Pool. Now people are able to stake without RPL. I'm still forced to hold my big bag while completely diluted because everyone who did not stake RPL with conviction and fell below 10% now all get rewards. Seeing massive yield discrepancy month over month. All the excess RPL is now for all intents and purposes truly useless. There is no way to withdraw to get the benefits everyone seems to be getting. Who did not stake with this conviction? How is he not being completely screwed over by not being able to withdraw at least towards the 10%? He has not been. So he's talking about a friend basically. He says he's been with Rocket Pool for almost 2 years and feels injustice in these decisions. This is long-term RPL bull who wants to believe all of this makes sense, but really needs a reasonable explanation. So he says, I'll be able to sort of get him on board with the 10% minimum in order to keep your RPL-based Minipool privileges, but not with the excess lockup. So the Noshua replied a little while later saying, I believe that not doing so not doing Saturn Zero would have been a lot worse for someone that is 20 to 30% collateralized and long-term supporter of Rocket Pool. Sure, their RPL yield would have been higher, but the protocol would continue the path towards irrelevancy and die in the not too distant future. If Rocket Pool is going to work, we need something like 7 million ETH and the node operators to support it. We've not seen node operator growth since July 2023, and we've seen node operators decline since February, and that has been preventing our ETH from growing for the same time. Noshua says, without Saturn Zero, we would continue on that path for another year. We're seeing now that our ETH demand isn't instant or infinite, and would be very unrealistic to think that we can mess around for multiple years and still be able to capture relevant market share. Saturn Zero puts us in a position to grow now. It's not perfect because we have to deal with limited resources and technical debt, but shrinking for multiple years is surely going to kill Rocket Pool. So that kind of then carried on with that discussion about rewards and why this happened and how things have been going like this. And very soon after that, the discussion went towards the technical debt basically, and from the technical debt it went to hiring and the team's positions about hiring. And then Mountain Bee said, I know that you Noshua think that we should put more developers into the protocol. Why do we? What's the reason for not having that basically? And let me actually go here. Noshua then kind of replied by saying, I think we would be in a much better place if the team had increased the number of devs by 2 to 3x after launch in November 2021. There's some upfront costs to doing that, but it will eventually pay off. For Saturn 1 and 2, it may not pay off if they started hiring the process now, because Patches here kind of explains how it works. So he says regarding hiring, it takes people away from being productive. So someone would have to train the new hires. So for example, Langus would have to take away time from his work, or you'd have to have Kane potentially taking time away from his work, depending on what the new dev was doing. So Patches then says it takes quite a lot of investment before the new hires convert from liabilities to assets. So of course you have to start paying the new person from day one. Hiring a smart contract dev is really expensive. And because you're paying the person from day one, they're not going to be productive from day one. So they are technically a liability until they can start working independently within the team and kind of pulling their own weight. And it might be, a while before that happens. Patches after that says that the pool of talent is shockingly thin. The number of good quality smart contract developers that are out there are minuscule. And then the problem is that they're very expensive, the ones that are there. In fact, like so much so that during the last bull market in 2021, smart contract developers were getting millions of dollars a year. In some cases, I heard stories of people being paid like more than $1 million a year for smart contract development. So yeah, and then number 4, Patches says the team and the GMC are on tight budgets, and then PDAO would probably have to step up payments. Basically, the team currently gets 5% of inflation, and then it would be that I think it's 5% of inflation, something like that. And then they would have to be paid more, of course. And then Patches says there is not a linear scale with humans; it's sublinear as conflicts and overlapping interests arise. So this is actually a really interesting point. So like if you have one smart contract developer, the output is 1. However, if you have 2 smart contract developers, their output isn't 2, but it might be like 1.8. For example, I'm just making up numbers here. So then if you have 10, it wouldn't be that the output is 10. Their output might actually be like 4, basically. So as you add more and more developers, the amount of nominal increase you get in productivity gets smaller and smaller. And then Patches says a lot of work on the client side stuff is needed to essentially reduce the number of employees required for maintenance. And it's a hard sell to hire someone to make themselves obsolete. Yeah. So the goal, of course, would be, the person would make themselves obsolete, and many people don't want that job. So Patches says, with all that said, I'm still in favor. He says if we could have 2-3 people contributing to SmartNode regularly, that doesn't require too much management, we could get a lot done. It's just fraught with pitfalls and whatnot. So this is actually really interesting because Patches has been hired by the GMC. to work with the team on smart node development, and the GMC has also given Patches access to a slush fund of some money that is for people who are helping Patches on smart node work. They could get a fraction of that money that Patches has, depending on how many hours they've worked and what work they've done. And sadly, not enough people are using that. Maybe it's because some people don't know about it. But if you are watching Rocket Fuel right now, and if you are interested in contributing to the team, especially on the smart node, then reach out to Patches and put your name forward, and you'll get paid for it. Like no one's expecting you to do the stuff for free. You might not get the best salary in the world, like in terms of the hourly rate. Like I think Patches here was talking about how he gets $100 an hour, which is a lot less than his friends who were working at positions similar to the one that he left. They're getting much more than that, and they get benefits. So this is a position that's $100 an hour, but with no benefits. So it really is difficult to get people working with Rocket Pool, because sadly there's not that much money there. Of course, if RPL token does really well and goes really high, then that becomes a whole different discussion where we potentially would have money. But right now, like Patches admits here, finances are tight, and we can only give out as much as we can. So that definitely limits things, sadly. But yeah, if you want to get involved in working with the team, or working with Patches at least, then reach out to Patches. And like I said, there's some money there. But I kind of agree with Noshua, and then Val as well gave a clarification, and Patches here as well. I really do think that hiring some staff is going to be worthwhile, even if it's just one person. I don't know what the optimal way of doing that, whether it be like hiring 2 or 3 people at the same time so they can all kind of get training together, and then you're just doing like one batch of training for multiple people, or whether the better thing would be to hire one person every few months and then have a steady stream of people coming in. And the reason why that might be better is because you're only dealing with one set of problems at a time instead of 3 sets of problems at a time. So I don't know what the optimal way of like hiring people are. I'm sure there's like some theory out there about what the best way of doing it is, and I'm sure that people in the community or the team know how that works. But I really do feel like the team needs to grow, but sadly at the moment it's quite difficult for that to happen. Okay, so just yesterday I was talking about the rETH price looking quite good, although not looking quite good, but being tolerable. It had a 0.25% discount on the secondary market, and that meant that if there were any large size mints, then they could still kind of come into the deposit pool and have that impact on the deposit pool. Sadly, since then it looks like someone has sold some thousands of rETH and on the secondary market, and now that discount has actually grown. So the discount is now 0.61% discount. I don't know if it's getting to the point where people will try to arb the exit, but I don't think it's quite at that point. So it might be that we hang around these levels unless we can get some rETH minting happening, and if not rETH minting happening, then maybe some secondary market buying to kind of drive up that, get us closer to peg again. But that sadly is not looking good. Here, someone who I don't really know in the community says, why again is there a discount? What is the problem? Admin. So I think some people are exasperated by what's happening, and there being a discount for rETH on the secondary market. But sadly there's not that much we can do. Like the 2 ways of fixing this is getting people to buy rETH on the secondary market, or node operators exiting their validators, and then that ETH kind of getting burned to bring it back to peg. That's what happened last week, and I guess we'll see what happens this time. Okay, talking about rETH, minting being kind of slow. Here, Halula put the Minipool queue output on Rocket Watch, and we saw that there is a long queue developing. So if you actually go to events, you can see here that the queue right now is 262 validators long, and the people who've been waiting the longest in the queue have been there for 13 days, so about 2 weeks. And currently we would need 8,000 ETH to get all of these validators through the queue, which means the deposit pool size is effectively 26,000 ETH worth of deposits. So kind of like just how I was explaining about the the rETH, being off peg. Sadly, the side effect of that is that we don't get ETH coming into the deposit pool. People buy it off the secondary market instead, and without it coming into the deposit pool, we can't keep these queues moving. So what we need is we desperately need rETH minting to happen. And sadly, so far there's not been that much of it happening. There's people have floated a lot of different reasons for it. Like some of it is that people want to be liquid. If there's a bull market, they want to be able to sell their ETH. And some people think that there might be like a depeg of liquid staking tokens, for example. There are a few different theories about why people are not minting, but the fact is that the queue's not moving that much. Now, one benefit of the queue not moving that much is that we actually get our ETH APR increasing. So if I show you the current rETH APR, it's back to like close to 100% effectiveness, and we are trending at heading back up towards 3% again. Last week, basically, I think, or a couple of weeks ago, we were just above 3%, and then we took a bit of a dip down as more validators came online. But now, as there's a longer queue again, the APR is going up again. And Val's dashboard here was updated to reflect the latest numbers, and you can see there's a spike up. Basically, there's those two moves down. One of them was around November 8th. There was a big deposit, and that, the 4,000 ETH deposit, and that really moved the number of validators in the queue down. And then there was another deposit, obviously, on the 18th of November, and that took us down a nice amount as well. That was the 2,000 ETH deposit. But since then, the queue has been getting longer, and we haven't had ETH coming in there. So the wait time right now is about 13 days. And that's not good, but 13 days I think is within within the limit of toleration. If you look at if you can get it in at low gas prices, like, you still are profitable fairly quickly. However, we don't want that number to be growing too much more than this, because that's when the user experience starts getting bad, and we definitely don't want that to happen. Okay, I know there's been a bunch of negative news just now, and there's a bit more negative news right now, and this is that the RPL ratio hit a new low against ETH, and this is now broken 0.03, and the new low ratio is 0.0029975. I think that was yesterday afternoon after I had finished recording. I don't think the ratio has actually gone down below that since then. We currently are sitting at 0.003028. So we're not far away from the low, but we're not actually at the low right now. And ETH and RPL moved up a little bit yesterday, but since then they've kind of just hung around and not really moved more than that. So the ratio, like I said, we've got a new low on the ratio, on the ratio against ETH, but not on the ratio against not on the price against the US dollar yet. So that's, I guess, a small mercy. Okay, let's move on to some staking news. And now we've got some news from Wonder, and this is, of course, from NodeSet about Constellation. So Wonder is saying that although the lack of demand for rETH is preventing the growth of Gravitas Constellation, we have continued to develop Constellation based on insights from Gravitas mainnet launch. Accordingly, we have just upgraded the Haleshki testnet of Constellation to version 1.0.1, and we expect the Gravitas mainnet deployment to be updated to this version in early December. This is a patch release with a few small changes. See below for the change notes. And then Wanda says, of course, NodeSet is bigger than Constellation, so stay tuned for more news on what's next. As always, thanks for being part of the NodeSet community. So here there's some updates on what is in the 1.0.1 release. It says adds Oracle recency requirement for deposits to make front-run attacks impossible even without admin intervention. The RPL liquidity is now prioritized over stake rebalancing during Minipool processing. Remove time lock requirements for the max validators parameter to allow the admin to increase the medium time lock delay without delaying growth responses. Optimized revert conditions for supernode account. Create Minipool to first check the most common reason for revert to save gas in those cases. Add an event in operator distributor.sol to help with rewards calculations, and XRETH and XRPL now comply with balances iRate provider interface for easier integration. So that's pretty cool that the DeFi stuff is working on there as well. So look out for that new change. You'll have to update your hyperdrive module for Constellation once that goes through to make sure that you're up to date with the latest version. But that's pretty exciting. Okay, and finally, I'm going to talk about some all-time high prices that are happening for crypto, and this one is first about Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is right on the verge of $100,000 Bitcoin. So far, it has peaked at 99,588 on Binance. You can just about see that on the top of the screen. If you can't, I'm sorry about that. And the Bitcoin is just going all guns blazing. The ETH BTC ratio is sadly kind of anemic in response to that, and it hit a new low yesterday at 0.03187. Another token that has hit all-time highs is Solana. So Solana hit a new all-time high at $264.39 on Binance, and it's performing incredibly strongly at the moment. One thing to keep an eye on though is this chart from CoinGecko that tells you how long it has been since a coin was at all-time highs. So you'll see that like a whole bunch of coins are still a fair distance away from their all-time highs, even though they've been pumping a lot recently. And the reason for that is because they were just down so far bad that even though they've gone multiples, hundreds of percent up in a short amount of time, they're still really far from their previous all-time highs. So Bitcoin hit all-time high today, and is tiny bit down from there now. Ethereum is still 32% away from its all-time high, and that last hit 3 years ago. Solana hit all-time high yesterday. BNB is 13% away from its all-time high, and that actually hit 6 months ago. XRP was last at its all-time high 7 years ago, and it's currently still 57% away from its all-time high. Dogecoin, even though that's climbed so much recently, it's still its all-time high was 3 years ago, and it's still 45% away from there. With Cardano, it's still 70% away from its all-time high, and that was 3 years ago as well. Tron, the last time it was at its all-time high was 7 years ago, and it's still 13% away from its all-time high. And then a whole bunch of other tokens that were at their all-time highs like 3 years ago, and some of them even 7 years ago. And that just shows that these tokens, even though they've pumped, if you look at it with a longer timeline, like Stellar, I think is a token that people in the community were talking about recently, having a couple of days of really strong pump action. The last time it hit its all-time high was in January 3rd, 2018, 7 years ago, and it still is down 61% from there. So even though it's number 17 token, and even though it's rallied really well recently, it's still down really far bad from its highs. Bitcoin Cash still down 87%, Chainlink still down 70%, Polkadot still down 90%, and Near still down 72%, Litecoin down 78%, Aptos down 40%, Uniswap down 80%. So these tokens are down bad from their all-time highs, and it just means that the market so far is kind of picking the winners so far, and there are not that many of them, and it looks like it might be maybe a little while longer before your token hits an all-time high. Hopefully our tokens will hit all-time highs soon or in 2025, but until then, it looks like some tokens are doing it now, and hopefully ours will come soon. So on that note, I'm going to end today's episode. So thank you all for watching, listening, and being part of the Rocket Fuel community. I hope you all have a lovely weekend ahead, and I'll see you all on Monday. Bye.